Right, good evening, everybody. The study session of June 14, 2022 is called to order. Mary, will you do a roll call, please?
Yes, I can. Councilmember Gutierrez,
Here.
Councilmember Bode,
Here.
Councilmember McDowell,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt,
Here.
Councilmember Peterson, here, Councilmember Sherman, here, Mayor Anisco.
Here. All right, everyone, tonight we're discussing the Public Works laydown yard. Wastewater Superintendent Brent Armstrong has information for us.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick off here. Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. Good evening, Mayor Anisco, Deputy Mayor Schmidt, and councilors. Good to see you folks. We've been working on the Public Works Maintenance Laydown Yard for a year and a half now, I'd say, something like that, just to try to figure out what we have over there and what we really need. So we got a planning needs study. And we got a report talking about a bunch of findings and hope to go over this and get some direction from you. And Brent, it's all yours, PowerPoint.
Okay, so the same is in your hand. A little bit of history on the city public works yard has been at 1000 West Pine for over 75 years. The main shop and Angleside booster pump station for our water system right next to Luke Field. The primary site for improvements in 1951. So you can see the developments on this slide as it's come along. And during this whole process, we've come up with kind of two solutions on building up this existing facility or moving to another city-owned property. We're trying to keep it on city-owned property to keep the costs down so we wouldn't have to purchase more real estate. But I don't know how many of you have been down there. I think most of you have been down there, and it's pretty old and dilapidated, but we keep it up as best as we can because we're still working out of there. At that site, we have fleet repair, water operations, parks, facilities, and our fueling station, as well as parking for the fleet and employees. We have limited covered storage right now. We try and keep the newer equipment and the highest cost items under cover and in heated storage when we can, but we've outgrown this facility already. And so we're just looking for direction on whether or not to expand down here or go new somewhere else. As you can see too in that picture, this is our fueling station. We have worked through some items as far as getting some backup fueling. We have a fuel trailer that we purchased, so if something goes down, and then we also have cards for the county's fueling system, which is up on the hill. So let's go ahead and go to the history. We're pretty covered there. Let's go to 5. Okay, this is the options that we've come across. During the planning stage, including building space needs such as office, lockers, eating, restrooms, meeting, emergency operations center, emergency power generation, work areas, sign shop, heated shop, etc. All these storages, that's what we've looked at. Option 1 is expanding our existing maintenance yard. And option 2 is constructing a new one up on city-owned property up by our well 1 area off Springs Road. So lower the conclusions.
That's from the study that we prepared here, that the bullet points are there just to say sort of what are we going to construct? So, you know, a building should last 50 years. It needs to be seismically capable, right? That, you know, we're emergency responders, you know, in an emergency, windstorm, snowstorm, all that. So you can go down there, you know, we need 5 acres on a site, those sorts of things. So that came out of the study that we worked on.
Yeah, these are all listed out in option 1 and what it's going to take to do that, expanding 2.6 yards. If you can go to that. So this is existing shop. We would take up a majority of loop field in order to do that. And ultimately have to cut across loop field and come out onto Franklin with easy truck entrance and exit.
That little sketch that you see is sort of a little interim plan, just to get some covered storage and do some things to sort of meet our immediate needs, but not all the needs. And then eventually the yard would need to expand, you know, back towards what Franklin there. And anyways, to add on another 2.5 acres, though, Brent and I were checking that out. That loop field wouldn't have to go away the whole loop field. It would take up probably 3/4 of it. So the idea would be is you take the westerly 2/3 or so, leave the other third to add on more playground stuff. You know, maybe a little small tot soccer field or something, you know, and if council wants to go down this type of path, you know, we can produce alternate plans. You obviously lose a baseball field and a soccer field with that. And then the running path, you would lose that, but that could be relocated to like the railroad trail. We can send people up to Alder also. And I think we can get around the running part of it, but it would save us money, but it's complicated. You're losing a park facility, right? And you would need to backfill those needs and, you know, make ourselves whole here, right? So anyways, so option 1, we wanted to give it to you guys, even though it's probably cheaper, it might not be a preferred option. And then the buildings that we have right now are not seismically reinforced also, right? So when we start adding new buildings, like a new shop would come in down the road and that sort of thing, new facilities would be put in seismic and the older ones would be taken offline for storage and that sort of thing. And then the last issue with option 1 is you only get like 5 acres. We got about 2.5 now. You had another 2.5 acres. You meet that 5 acre need, but 50 years from now, you need another 2.5 acres, right? And so that's why option number 2 works a little better, that there's a lot of space up there. And
yeah, and along with, go to the next slide and you have it here. It's one of the other things that we were talking with Mark about is the improvements that were done to loop field were done with a grant. And so we'd have to see how much of that 80,000 we would have to pay back that those were done with. And still we don't know what would happen to that site in a seismic event. We're right at the toe of the slope. It could take out everything. So option 2 is the new maintenance yard up off Springs Road. Property just right next to well 1. And it's owned by us. But if you bring up 9, it shows the layout for the proposed site. And as well as you can see there, we have a lot of useful land that we can sprawl underneath the power lines that is useful for lay down. We do have a few height restriction areas, but not much else can be built through there. We're proposing to go to this site, and so we would phase our process of moving up there. If you go to the next slide, it shows clearing, grading, fencing, stormwater, maybe some yard lighting, and utility stubs. It's kind of phase one breakdown, and then paving, some covered storage and admin buildings, and a fueling station with generator up there. So phase three would be complete admin building, more covered areas, Vector dump station, salt bins. The initial phase has that we're trying to figure out how to get a portable unit for fuel and have it close to the shop. And then when we expand, it's going to move over closer towards Wallace Neyland. And that one will be in and out. We'll have multiple ways in and out of this area. The police will be able to come in and fuel at that facility also. And then the next one's kind of a sketch of what concepts that we've came up with now, and we have some expansion room for future. And then the next phase of currently, this is going to take a while to, if this is the lane we pick to get up there. We need to spend a little bit of our budget on, go ahead to the next one there, Jim. On our current facility. This is our current break room and bathroom down at the shop. I believe that there are 17 or 18 employees housed down there, and we need to upgrade their facilities. Additional bathrooms, eating areas, and locker room. We've came up with some ways that we can improve this site with covered storage, portable restroom, stuff that we can actually bring up to the new maintenance yard if we do deem to go there. And then last on 15 is just kind of a breakdown, and this is all budget driven and to be determined how soon or where we go. These are just some numbers on a path forward.
I think one of the most important things, is that in phase one, getting some covered storage, we're buying expensive pieces of equipment, then they sit out in the rain and the sun and all sorts of things. Getting in the existing yard some covered storage, we'll be able to move it, when the new yard's in place. And then also just making the people facilities better, the lunchroom, break room, the lockers are right in there, and there needs to be a little more formal locker room sort of thing. There's not enough toilets, for that number of people, there's just not enough bathroom facilities. So we bought one portable restroom. What did that cost? I think it was like $3,500. And we got it in an auction, and it's fully contained, hot, cold water, sink, heater, and the whole bit. And it goes outside, and we're going to get a permit and get it all plumbed in. But it can move up to the new yard. It's actually nice to have a bathroom out in the middle of your yard where all your machinery and stuff is. You don't, when you're out there working on things and whatever, you don't have to go into the building and go around the corner to use the restroom. So then the goal in phase one is to get through land use approval phase with an engineer / architect, get through community development, pick up our needed permits, go and clear the site next year, and get those phase one improvements done, the grading and some gravel and fencing and lighting and those sorts of things. Then we'll be able to move things up there that we don't use a whole lot, like sanders, for example. I mean, they sit there and hang in those racks, 98% of the time, right? We don't need them right there. And so we'll be able to move pipe storage up there, some manhole storage, and start working on, the next phase, which will be the expensive phase. That's for the design and permits of the building, paving, those sorts of things, down the road that will work our way into that. As part of phase 1, 2, we'll come up with conceptual designs for the buildings. You guys can look at them. So you can look at the campus a little more, what the final intent is. We got everything sort of in places, but we just need to make sure it's in the right place. We have future expansion capability. And then we also try to we want to save some of the white oak trees on the site. We also want to try to provide like a public meeting room up there. And maybe have a walking trail around, that connects maybe into the middle school or something was an idea to try to provide some public amenities up there also. Brent, did you have more to add? I think we had this summary slide as a picture or something. Yeah. So that's sort of the end of the presentation.
Yeah, so we're just kind of looking at the direction that the council comes with now is saying which way you would like us to proceed.
All right, questions?
So you probably
Yeah.
heard me say to you about getting that equipment off of at the bottom of the hill, off the place that it's all there in case there's an earthquake. I mean, Public Works is and I've talked to Jeff about this and other people. You are the lifesaver in a catastrophe. And if that catastrophe gets destroyed, here we are with nothing to use, nothing to help the people of Shelton. I like the idea of moving up very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So if you do this and you're moving up to the yard up there and you're taking your lesser used items at first, you were talking about like your sweeper and stuff, you take it up there. Do you have a security plan or something that doesn't get messed with till you guys are all moved in?
Yeah. So anything that we put up there until we moved in there would be pretty much indestructible thing, concrete pieces, pipe,
Okay.
Things like that, really heavy articles, sanders are really hard to mess with. There's just not much to them, those sorts of things. And then we wouldn't put anything significant up there until we actually had an administration building in up there. And so the way that works is when you move administration and people up there, the fleet has to come on at the same time. Rather than having, if you had fleet down there and then a bunch of people up there, all the vehicles are up there, but then the fleet guys down here, you need to bring both of them online at the same time. So that's where phase 2 gets a little expensive.
And it would be fenced and lit by the time that.
So
A deputy mayor. Oh, yeah.
The phased approach, is that just because of budget constraint?
Exactly right.
If it was ideal, would you still pursue a phased approach, or would you do this at once?
We would do it all in one phase.
Okay.
The things tend to be getting a lot more expensive, and today's dollars are a lot better than tomorrow's dollars because we have no guarantee prices are going to go down anytime soon.
Right.
So yes, if we have the money, we're talking in the range for the total project, somewhere in, $8 to $10 million sort of range, to get this all in there and to get it seismically reinforced with a backup generator and a water quality facility and moving the covered storage up there and get the equipment under coverage, those sorts of things. So it's a big project. The good news though, is that it can be split between quite a few funds, right? We have parks that's going along, we have EM&R, we have storm, we have sewer, we have water, we have streets. So, you have these different funding sources, over time. So at my previous job, we planned one of these out, and we need about 5 years worth of money going into a capital reserve account, maybe 8, to get it parked over there so we can go pull the trigger. And that's why we have the phased approach, is we know how much it's gonna cost in the future. We make dedicated, funding each year and put the money away and then go and have the means to build the thing. Much more preferable than doing any more loans. I am debt adverse. I like to try to cash fund everything if possible.
All right.
Just my question was, is there anything up there that has to be removed at the new site in option 2? But option 1 just seems like a lot of taking away park space, having big trucks in the little residential zone with all the houses, but up there it seems like it's a lot more space and there's really nothing we're taking away. We're just using existing land. Is that just the gist of?
Yeah, it would be logged, cleared and, but the plans, show leaving buffer on the school side and Springs Road side.
Right.
So,
And the well site, that's the only concern of mine.
yeah, and it's away from a well-contained area.
So my question is more like, Councilman Schmidt, is how fast can we do this? Instead of keeping it there, and this is also a flood zone as well, right? Am I getting that clear?
Groundwater, high groundwater table.
Groundwater.
I don't think we're not in the 100-year floodplain up there.
No, at the
Down here.
current shop.
Yeah.
Oh, current shop,
Yeah.
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 It's not in there.
It's
Even the current shop isn't.
I think the only thing special that we would have to do for this site is make sure that we coordinate with BPA so we could use the areas under their power lines for storage.
Okay.
But as long as there's no buildings or anything like that, BPA is usually pretty comfortable with doing that.
They have some height restrictions for us. We do own the underlying property. They have an easement over it. So, we still have some rights in there.
That was my second part was, how does BPA feel about all our stuff underneath? But
Yeah.
that can be worked out.
Yeah.
Councilmember Peterson.
Are there any anticipated uses of the downtown location after the move's completed for public works? I mean, is there an auxiliary use for that space? I know we've talked about as we continue to expand in the UGA, especially on the north end, how that's going to impact services. Some of these things, of course, lay down, it makes sense to have it all together, but do you anticipate Public Works will continue to use the downtown location in another capacity or in an auxiliary capacity, or what might that look like?
That's correct. So last week we had a long meeting about that and that we would use the existing public works site for the equipment and things that we don't, more as storage type of thing, of things we're not using as much. We could use it for facility storage, park storage, public works storage, because the space is okay. It's heated, a lot of it. And we already have a water facility there that we got to keep. We have a booster pump station there. We're going to be in there anyways. So it's likely that we'll keep storage there. We also might double up our fuel supply in the future and put some up on the hill and have some down here. That's easier for the police to get in and out of there, but they'd have capability to go up top also. So we were thinking about things like that. But yeah, keep it in a lower state, but keep it more as a storage space, which it's well suited for that right now.
Thank you.
How large is the new parcel? Host?
Yeah, the total acreage, when you go under if you include the power line areas and all that, it's about 30 acres. It's big.
I remember that was a huge parcel.
Mhm.
And also, what will the new yard look like? Will it be appealing? It's, I mean,
It's gonna be a dump.
A
No,
great
I mean,
question. So if you
Start.
pull up the Stafford Hills Tennis Club in Tualatin, Oregon, it was a Butler building, the metal buildings with metal roofs. We chose the metal appropriately. We also, where we had public facades, didn't put metal on there, put concrete siding on, climbing vines, lights that shine up, trees that are appropriate, boulders, rocks, that sort of thing. So it'd be slab on grade, metal buildings, so we can clear span, we can make them seismically reinforced too, right? Which is really important. And metal is really good for that. Unfortunately, metal looks a little ugly. I get it. you know, with the doors and all that, but it's going to be inward facing. So when we go through community development on the design review, we'll have color palettes, metal palettes, little landscape plan, that sort of thing, that we'll be able to show people what it's going to look like.
Is there any concern about any noise at all affecting the schools?
Yeah, our noise
Yes.
is actually quite minimal. That we're there generally during the daytime when there's other uses going on. The kids in the playground are actually more noisy next door than we are. And the ball comes over the fence all the time and all that. But really, I mean, the loudest thing we have in there is maybe the compressor running. It's older. It turns on or off every couple hours. And one of the big diesel older trucks firing up, you know, they tend to rumble a lot, but we're not in there running jackhammers and that sort of thing, right?
Well, I wouldn't be interested in losing the field
Oh, no.
at all. So, I mean, to put my 2 cents in there. My only concern is if we go into a recession, we have to stop this project somewhere along the line. I mean, it doesn't sound bad the next couple of years, but after that, I mean,
So the way we would approach that is, this would not be a mandatory spend. And Jay is right, you know, we want to make sure that we pay for these things as we go rather than incurring more debt. So if we say, and I'm just throwing a number out there, if we say we want to dedicate $250,000 a year to this project across all funds. So you're taking a little bit from each one. And then a recession hits where we don't have money to dedicate it to that. That would be one of the first things that's removed from the spend annual budget for council.
One thing about public works projects during recessions, though, if you get to a point where you have enough money, your pricing comes out a lot better. There's more workers and you get very favorable bidding.
And moving up there could potentially create and free up space up here too. If we are able to move some engineering into this new facility. And then as well as having the community and community meeting rooms, and it would probably be our EOC for future stuff.
And we're actually closer to the county EOC also.
perfect. Cal, Deputy Mayor.
So yeah, just to be clear, yeah, I support, I'm more supportive of option 2. And I would like to ask that we get a little bit more detail on the project itself. I like what's being proposed, but some more concrete details on costs. I would almost want to prefer to do this in one package as opposed to a phased approach. But again, obviously we are restricted by funds. Is there any general fund contributions towards this?
That depends on where our reserve policies are and other projects that we have. So for instance, right now in the water and sewer funds, we have 2.8, I believe, dedicated to the AMI project. So that brings down our fund balance, you know, quite a bit. If this becomes a priority and the $8 million kind of, you know, window that Jay was talking about, we would not be able to do that all at once immediately. That would still take several years to save.
There's some other challenges I know, and it's difficult to likely get additional funding for facilities, building facilities. I do know that's a stretch. So my wonder is there other things we can do? I understand you want to kind of keep the old property, but from a revenue offset perspective, and why not consider selling that off? Is there liabilities on the property that would prevent us from doing that?
Yeah, the fuel tanks are there.
They're above
And
ground.
the structure, they're above ground. The structures are pretty dilapidated too, that a lot of that stuff would need to be demolished. We'd also have to keep the Angleside booster station there. It's an important part of our water system, so we would still have a presence there. And it unfortunately is like all the way in the back there. So it's a little problematic to just sell the site. The ground is worth some money, but you got some pretty high demolition costs. The garage or the shop that we're in right now was in that 1951 aerial photo. Nobody knows how old that thing is, so.
And I'm wondering too, sorry, I'm wondering too, what challenges we run into now, especially with Climate Commitment Act and clean buildings, clean energy related to facilities and, you know, essentially facilities at a certain level have to kind of be efficient to a point, right? And what you have down there, I'm assuming won't pass muster in the future. So whatever you construct moving on, probably, you know, will fall into that. So we could be just looking at other if we keep what we have, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The cost of renovation and bringing that up to current code and everything else, you know, I'm assuming that that's a pretty significant cost.
So once you hit the 50% threshold on buildings, you're required to bring it up to the current energy code. Right now, we're under the 2015 code, which was a pretty significant jump, or no, 2018. Right? Which was a pretty significant jump over 2012 and 2015, and those things are only going to continue to ramp up.
Councilmember Peterson.
I also support moving, you know, looking at option 2. One of the things that I do wonder about, as we're moving forward, I shouldn't say wonder about, one of the things that I will say I've heard from the community over and again is that we have had a tendency to kick the can down the road on some of these much needed projects and facilities. And so one of the things that I'm really glad to see is that city staff is being really intentional about where we're going to be and what our long-term needs are, so we can be adequately funded rather than, oh, wait, we have a problem and now we need to come up with a lot of money to find a solution to that. So thank you for taking this on. I know that we put a lot of pressure on Jeff and the entire team to continue to work on asset management and long-term planning. And I think this is a really great step in that direction. And I'm hopeful the community will support that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogt.
I thought, other than since I'm up, I definitely don't want to lose any loop field either. I think that would cause a lot of problems. There's a lot of soccer that goes on there. There's a lot of stuff that happens there. So I definitely support moving the facility. And I also support doing it as quickly as we can.
It'd be nice to have over $10 million.
Yeah.
I just lost it. So when everything is all said and done, will there be any space to expand the field and maybe have a carnival there and maybe, you know,
So
covered parks or covered areas for picnics and stuff? Would there be room for something like that down the road once we get everything moved and you get what you need left over? And
Yeah, that's an idea we actually spoke of, is that if it's more of a storage facility, the paved areas, you know, people can, and all the storage is locked, the gates can open up and the community can actually use that facility, you know, to walk through, or vendors can park in there more and come through the gate like they did with the Forest Festival, right? That the vendors were all on that side. But we thought that if we think about it right, and the Parks Department, you know, planned it out pretty good, that the existing maintenance facility could really help Loop Field and some of the functions there.
And just going back to Deputy Mayor Smith's question earlier about selling the property, we would want to explore every potential use that we could think of for that piece. Because if the need comes up later, then we just have to buy something else, and that's not efficient, or as efficient as it could be.
I realize I said I'd like more detail and I wasn't very specific on what detail I wanted to see, but I guess I would like to propose in 2023, we fund design, at least for the project. If you guys would be interested in looking at that, I don't know what that would cost, but at least then we could see the design and build out in from an engineer perspective, what that would look like. And then, yeah, I think it sounds like a lot of us are supportive of your second option.
And that's what we had in the budget for the most part. I'll tune it up though, so we know a little bit more about the building shapes, colors, architectural stuff, that sort of thing. Now, when you say design, do you mean site design or full building design? Because we were designing the site, but not the buildings right away.
Whatever your final product would be.
Okay.
So I believe in the PowerPoint, you had a $80,000 estimate for
22, 23.
Yeah, So my thinking is to include building elevations, what it would look like for with the rock and the climbing lines and all those types of things, architectural renderings of the buildings.
Yeah, and again, yeah, whatever detail you need to include in there, so we could get a better, visual of what's being proposed. I think we all kind of have an idea, but something we can carry around with us in the community when we're.
Sure, but we probably wouldn't go to the level of doing the seismic calculations and the bolt spacing and all of
sure.
that real technical stuff until we actually got to a point where we knew we were going to be building the buildings.
I guess maybe in my mind, I kind of think of these types of projects as if something falls out of the sky one day, or we have a good year or something like that, and we have something more shovel ready. I hate to use that term, it's overused right now, but I think these are projects like that. If we had opportunity to make these things happen, I'd like it to be a little bit closer ready to go than what we've got right now.
Yeah, and that'll give us time to get through some of the SEPA and
Yeah.
land use and just
Yeah, it's
have it
even
ready in
feasible.
that manner.
That'd be great.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Yes, thank you. My question is, could we add to that planning process, maybe we'll work with Mark about converting that, instead of losing loop field, adding to loop field and the park amenities in that study that Councilmember Schmidt proposed? Could we have options for expanding park usage for that area? That's something I'd like to, if we could.
We can take a look at options. We would break it down for the two separate sites. So you have, these are your options for that loop field site. These are the options and maybe the planning level design. So you get a plan view and show where the buildings are, parking lot is, everything, fueling station, and then elevations for the building. So you can kind of see what it looks like when you're standing on the site. And then on the other, on the Pine Street site, we can say what the options are, what the possibilities are, and maybe put some very high level cost estimates on what that would look like.
Part of the studying comes from the Parks Department anyway, so.
Well,
Yeah.
potentially.
Potentially.
So we'll look at all the funding options and find out what other priorities there are for the Parks Department. We have the trail that we are talking about. That is going to be a very expensive project. We have Eagle Point, the design for that non-motorized boat launch area down there. Another pretty expensive project, and as Jay mentioned earlier, prices continue to go up, as we all know. So it depends on where the priorities are, but we'll take all that input during budgeting session and determine, what is most important for council, and then we'll go from there.
So one of my priorities would be having converted that into park space. Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson.
Is there sort of an industry standard for population size of the city and what size public works fleet, employees, et cetera, you need to support that? And I ask because we continue to have these conversations about expanding into the UGA, adding rooftops, the importance of adding housing, and that puts a strain on the public works department. So I want to be really careful that if we're going to be moving in this direction, we don't underbuild for the needs that we have
That's
coming
what
in.
this study did. It took like how many sewer workers are going to be up there, how many square feet per worker. They drive their car there, you need a parking spot for that. They have a white truck over there, you need a spot for that. And so the study went through and did a really good job to identify what our space needs were and parking needs.
Yeah, and this lists our current fleet and employee.
And as far as the growth,
Right, thank
projections
you.
for those growth are based on the comprehensive plan population adopted figure. There is kind of a very high level metric on employees per, for whatever fund, whatever function. The difficulty with that is a city our size and expected to grow similar to us, north of Seattle is going to have different geographic issues that they're working through. So it's all very high level, but not necessarily something that we can point to and say, this is what we need.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like you have some direction.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. Does the council have any new items for discussion? I'd like to have a brief discussion on maybe working with the courts to upgrade this chamber. That works for both of us. We were talking about that. Now we're talking about spending money. Let's talk a little more about some more money.
Yeah, we tabled that a while ago, didn't
Quite
we?
a while ago, yeah.
It wasn't quite. a
You know,
while.
I think it wouldn't be
Circa
too hard to
2018.
expand on this, just
Yeah.
to make a U on each side, and you can have, you know, attorneys and on both sides, and for them, and then for us, we could be, you know, and then we have a little space between us and the citizens.
I have some ideas about council chamber design to make it more comfortable for people to provide in-person comments to council.
Mhm.
So it's more conversational rather than, you know, it feels like you're giving a presentation in middle school, right? But I have some ideas around that. I want to make sure that we respect the court's area and how they're set up.
Yeah.
I can definitely talk to them about that and see maybe what would work for them and what wouldn't. And talk with our facilities folks and see what would work and what wouldn't. And present a couple options to council along with costs. I know we did look into that 3 years ago.
2018, I think.
roughly.
I mentioned, because Judge Greer had mentioned recently that he was gonna be getting some money for some upgrades also, so maybe we work with him together and we pitch in a few bucks and
Yeah.
get her done.
We can take a look at that for sure.
I say if that is something we're looking at, I mean, the more things can be built in so that staff's not having to set up tables and
Yes.
worry about those
Yeah.
things too. I mean,
Mhm.
y'all have enough to be doing without Mark having to set a crews of people to come in and get us set up every Tuesday night.
Oh, yeah, built-in mics, you know, works.
Yeah, and there's some of those things. The system we have now, the video system, the JET system. Was a huge upgrade. Now it's taken a little bit of time to figure it out, make sure it all works with Zoom and everything else. We did a great job with that. If we go in like the microphone wells you kind of see on the floor. Make sure all those things are permanent. You know, we can take a look at options for sure.
And if it is something we're looking at, and whether it's here or in another space, I think that there's an opportunity to provide additional community meeting space, because especially as the world has changed and people have become more reliant upon technology, there's not a lot of options for folks. And right now it's pretty much you're going out to Mason County Public Works offices, or now the library's reopened, but I mean, that's a much smaller space. So if we can also offer that as an amenity to our community groups, I think that would be a benefit.
Sounds good. Any new items for discussion or comments on that?
No comments on that. I kind of have, I guess it's somewhat of a new item for discussion.
Okay.
I don't feel like as a council, we're still really on the same page of where we see our town. I was talking with a few people about it the other day, and two of our most robust conversations this year have been about cats and chickens. And like, we're not on the same page even with that, like which kind of roll into the vision of our city. So I think getting as a council a little bit clearer on that direction would be really nice. And I think important.
100% agree with you.
So. Your next comprehensive plan update, or the community's next comprehensive plan update is due at the end of 2025. Those processes typically start at least 2 years early with a community involvement plan and those types of things. A review of the countywide planning policies, a review of which also informs the city's comprehensive plan. And a review of your current city policies as adopted through the comp plan, and that kind of starts the ball rolling with the community involvement piece. And I would suggest that exercise can be incredibly intense and provide a lot of opportunity for you all to discuss your collective vision. I also think the strategic planning document that we worked on at the end of May that I sent you all last Friday, just to make sure I got it right, what is something that we can use to work on as well. And a lens for us to view projects and opportunities through us as the city team, city employee team, to view projects through, to implement kind of your vision of what the community ought to be 20 years from now, 40, 50 years from now. So those things are very helpful, but that comprehensive plan update is going to be entertaining for all.
Will that include zonings?
So comprehensive plan designations are a little bit higher level. The zoning is the implementation level of the comp plan designation. But it will necessarily kind of drive the discussion of what types of neighborhoods and compatibility issues that will actually occur on the ground. It's kind of it's almost a prism through which we implement what we want the community to look like. Or what you want the community to look like.
Well, and just to dovetail with what you said, James, I think that I had a very similar conversation just today with someone about that. And I really want to point out that I think staff has had a lot to do in terms of foundational work at direction of council, particularly from when we began as council in 2018, after that election, getting the budget in order, getting policies in place, and some of the must-haves. And we're now at the point that I think we have an opportunity to kind of take on some of those harder issues that maybe aren't as immediate and as daily in nature, but maybe you're going to take some time. And so I'm eager that we are able to start taking a deeper look at some of those things and really starting to tackle what matters in the big picture, as well as the things that have to happen day to day. And so I really want to thank staff for the work you put in thus far, getting a lot of those foundational pieces in place so we can start looking at the big picture, because there's a lot of opportunity, and it would be a missed opportunity if we weren't able to start having those conversations. And I think the meetings with the port and the county was one step. Meetings with the tribe has been one step. Code updates, there's a lot of pieces, but there's also some realities that we as a community are facing that, there's hard issues that no one wants to talk about, or they want to talk about, but haven't had an opportunity to identify some solutions. And that's where we have an opportunity to provide some leadership. I'm hopeful that this group's up for the challenge.
Last Friday, we reopened the library, the library. It's beautiful. Go get your library cards. They offer so much more than just checking out books. And being civically engaged is really important for everyone. So check out the library and see your fees and tax dollars at work, because it's beautiful there.
Anything else, council? This meeting is adjourned at 6:47. Oh, do I need to announce the next meeting? It's not on here. We have a
21st.
our next
And-
meeting.
And a
There's an
reminder
activity.
that Monday, June 20th is a holiday and the city offices will be closed.
Okay. We got that. So the next meeting is June 21st at 6 p.m. This meeting is adjourned at 6:47 p.m.
Metropolitan Park District.
Oh,